This channel supports Extra Life in its efforts to raise money for the Children's Miracle Network. For more information about how to donate and join in their efforts, go to the link displayed here. Extra Life. Play games, heal kids.
What up, everybody? This your boy Black Magus, back with another Black Thoughts, and apologies for the lateness of this, but there's a couple of topics that I wanted to touch on. Been kind of busy with work and working on personal things, but wanted to go over the Joe Biden incident. For those who don't know, Joe Biden was accused of inappropriate behavior by a former congressional aide. I believe her name is Amy Lapos, who claimed that while during a fundraising event, Joe Biden pretty much touched her in a way that made her very uncomfortable. I believe it was rubbing noses or something. She said that she didn't feel like it was sexual, but at the same time it made her uncomfortable. And since then, a couple of other women have come forward to speak on how Joe made them feel uncomfortable by the way that he's touched them and things like that. Biden has since come out with a video in which he expressed that, basically he meant nothing by it. From what I have seen from different statements that have been made, he hasn't necessarily directly said the words "I'm sorry," but from the tone and the implication of the responses, it seems that he expressed that he understands and acknowledges how that stuff can make people feel uncomfortable, and has vowed to change his behavior. Now, a couple of things. One, I've seen articles and I've seen replies in which people have said that, him not saying directly that he was sorry is the problem, which I can understand. Sometimes you do need to just come out and just say, "I'm sorry," even if it was not your intent. I guess you could say, "I'm sorry, it wasn't my intent, but I apologize for making you feel uncomfortable." A lot of people felt like he did not say that, so a lot of people have issue with his statements. At the same time, I will say this: I do acknowledge that he at least understands what he does is viewed as inappropriate. It's a very difficult thing, I think, in some ways. Like, for me, I have no problem just saying "I'm sorry." That's just me. At the same time, I don't necessarily think that he doesn't get it. I just think that being old school, it's weird. It's a weird thing. Like, and I know it feels like I'm kind of sticking up for him, but I'm not. I do think that he does need to say just sorry. Say the words "I'm sorry." It's not that hard. But at the same time, coming from where he comes from, the era, a lot of people don't know how to address those things because, sadly, they've never thought that what they were doing was wrong, and it's hard for them to imagine that what they did was wrong. It's a weird thing. Being in my 40s, I get that mentality because it's the mentality that I was raised around. But at the same time, I understand 100% and agree that, times are different. You can't do that shit. Shit changes. Life changes. And what you did back in the 80s or 70s or whatever, that shit don't go no more. People aren't comfortable with that stuff no more. And so it's weird. I appreciate him acknowledging it. I'm not as hard as on him as others are for not saying directly "I'm sorry," because it could have been a lot worse. He could have just made it a whole look, I don't know what the hell is wrong with y'all. You need to get over it type of affair, which I don't think he was doing. it's a new era. Things have changed, especially with the Me Too stuff, and not everybody can pivot and adjust as quickly as the world needs it to. So we have to be careful of like kind of always constantly condemning everybody for not just falling completely in line. At the same time, we do need to make sure that these people understand, hey, you know, you have to change your behavior. Like, am I mad at him for what he did because that's how he is? No. I'm willing to give him benefit of the doubt. Am I mad at him for not saying I'm sorry directly? No, but I do stress that he should come out and say I'm sorry. He really needs to say that. And I'm glad that people are coming out and saying like, yo, say you're sorry, so that he can hopefully come out and address that. Like, I don't think he's a bad man. I don't think he's bad intention, but guys, we need to adjust our behavior, seriously. Especially all of those in my age bracket and beyond. You know, the whole "you can't teach an old dog new tricks" statement is bullshit. You're a human being. You can learn and you can adapt. So do that. And I at least appreciate that he acknowledges that, hey, I need to change my shit. So yeah, would it be nice if he just come out and says I'm sorry? Definitely. But I think people also need to not dismiss the fact that he openly has said like, yo, times have changed, social norms aren't the way that they used to be, and we all gotta like act accordingly and change our ways. I don't think he didn't say I'm sorry to be defiant. I think that's one thing I think people probably need to at least give a little benefit of the doubt. I know it's hard for us to give benefit of the doubt sometimes these days. I just hope that he comes out and says I'm sorry, at least. That would be cool. If he doesn't, am I gonna say that he's disingenuous? No. I would at the worst say that, he's just stubborn like a lot of us to I guess quote unquote fully comply with the way people want things to be done. Does this hurt his presidential chances? Probably not. Because again, I do think that he genuinely feels that he's fucked up. I think he's made enough statements to show that. But I, again, do understand why the words "I'm sorry" are very appreciated by those who had issue with what he did. It's just a weird thing. Like, culturally, we're changing very, very rapidly. Things aren't the same as they were, and I'm glad things aren't the same. Like, for me personally, glad things aren't the same they were when I was being raised, because looking back at the social norms, quote unquote, that we had, in particular in my time, like the 80s, early 90s, it was some bullshit. We were on some like really fucked up shit for real, and I'm glad to see that stuff changing. I think people do need to learn to be just a teeny bit more patient and understanding, though, that it's not going to just flip over. Like, I know we're in the age of immediate gratification, but life don't necessarily work that way, and it's going to adjust. And addressing this and having the discussion with Joe will help him understand why he needs to say I'm sorry. Just bashing him, I don't think is the right way to go. Like, I think we do that too much. We just go all in and just basically bash everybody. And I know it's going to be probably assumed that because I'm a guy, I'm more forgiving, on what he did. Now, I don't feel more forgiving because as a person who's not a touchy-feely person myself, I get uncomfortable when people do shit like that to me, so I totally understand. All I'm saying is that don't just write him off as a person. Politically speaking, I could care less. I don't necessarily have any aspirations as far as like wanting to see him as president. I understand why a lot of people are hyped over the possibility of Joe Biden running for presidency because they feel like it's just going to be a continuation of the Obama era and all that. I want somebody different. I don't want him. I don't want Bernie. I want like the old guard to kind of step aside and let someone a lot younger, more dynamic to come in and bring in like keep continuing this new wave of change in our political and social system. I do think that Joe gets it and Bernie gets it to a level, but I do think that you kind of need someone living in the now, in my opinion, to run things. So yeah, Joe did what he did, and I am at least glad he acknowledged that he said that it was wrong. And you know what? Better than what we have right now, because Lord knows some of the people that we have that are currently in charge, we all know who I'm talking about, truly don't give a fuck. At least he gave a fuck enough to say, I need to stop doing that shit. Just would be, again, it would be nice if he just came out and said, I'm sorry, and I don't know. I think part of the reason why he doesn't say he's sorry because of the natural assumption that if he apologized, then clearly he must have intended to do that. I do get that element of it because a lot of people feel like you wouldn't say you're sorry if you weren't doing anything wrong, which is not true. There's ways to apologize for your behavior and not necessarily say that you were intentionally trying to do something. And that's probably part of it. It's probably like a uncomfortable level of being willing to say I'm sorry because he feels like if he does, everybody will feel like, yeah, you're only sorry because that's what you were doing. It's a weird thing. It's a very, very weird thing. But yeah, he should just say I'm sorry. Say I'm sorry. My intent was not to make anybody uncomfortable, and if I made you feel that way, I apologize. Bam. Some people don't get that. Some people look at apologies as just flat out admitting that you were intending ill will, which is not that way. But anyway, it's an interesting situation. I'm curious to know what you guys think of the whole Joe Biden thing. Do you think that he was intentionally doing these things in a harmful and malicious manner? Do you think that he is sincere in his statements? Do you think that he didn't do enough from what he said in response to these allegations? Anyway, as always, feel free to hit me up. Let me know what you think, and I'll holler at you later. This your boy Blak Makers, and I'm out. Deuces.